Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel, TheSketchMonkey here. Today we're gonna have a look at the G70 Shooting Brake, which is of course the wagon version of the G70 Genesis, and this kind of redefines again what a shooting brake is, because traditionally a shooting brake is a two-door sporty coupe with a kind of wagon rear end. So a coupe with a wagon rear end, but it's traditionally been two doors. But we've seen lately that a lot of different companies like to put shooting brake in the end of the name, and that's the case with the Genesis G70 here. Now, I really like the latest design approach from Genesis. I think they're doing a great job coming up with this new identity for their brand, specifically the Concept X, which they showed recently. I think that's the right approach for Genesis. The Concept X, the proportions just blew my mind when I saw it, and I hope they put something like that into production. But if you look at the G70 shooting brake here, from here we have the front view, of course. It kind of lacks the excitement that the Concept X had, in my opinion. It might work for some brands to have an approach like this. I just don't know if it's the right approach for Genesis, since they've shown us what they're capable of doing, and they've shown us that they have a clear identity when it comes to the graphics and also the proportions of the car. So what I want to do in this video is just talk about the front, side, and the rear, and then focus on the rear and redesign the rear into something that is a little bit more reminiscent of the Concept X, both in graphics and proportions as well. So this is the front view of the Genesis G70 Shooting Brake right here. This is a smaller car than the G80, for example, as the name suggests. And usually what happens when you have a smaller car like this compared to a bigger sibling, such as the 3 Series compared to the 5 Series, A4 compared to the A6, you have the Volvo S60 compared to the S90 example. And every time that happens, the smaller sibling, in this case, the G70 Shooting Brake or the G70, they get a lot more styling added to the car. So it has a lot, usually more fluid designs, more traditional styling when it comes to the shoulder lines and the curvatures that we have right here, for example, and this curvature right here as well, and also the styling of the headlights. So you can see that these are a lot more stylized than we have on the G70, and that is one of these things that happens when you do a smaller version or a smaller sedan, the G70 compared to the G80. The larger siblings in these cases oftentimes have a lot more restrained design. So the larger the sedan or the car is, usually the lack of styling and curvatures and emotions it is in the design, the larger it is, the more architectural the design becomes. And that just makes sense, because you want to have the larger cars, which are usually supposed to be a bit more luxurious. They don't necessarily need all the styling features. They're not as cool. They're more restrained and laid back compared to the younger siblings. But what I think about the G70 here Shooting Brake is, I think it struggles to really figure out what it wants to be. So look at it from a side view. First of all, I want to just quickly mention that this front end, I kind of like it, but it still looks a little too normal for me when it comes to I like the G80 a lot better, and I love the Concept X front end, of course. I think they should have maybe implemented some of that into this design as well, even though it is the smaller sibling, but keep some more of an architectural Art Deco approach to the design like we have in the G80. But what I want to talk about here in side view, this is where it gets really interesting, because it feels like it's struggling to be a wagon here. Maybe that's why they put the shooting brake instead of wagon or estate or something like that, because it really doesn't. It looks like a mix between a sedan and a wagon, and it doesn't know if it wants to be either or. And I want to kind of bring the wagon-ness into this design more and really make a statement that this is a wagon. Because if we do something like this, we just dip this down a little bit, we haven't changed the C-pillar or anything, but all of a sudden you have a regular looking sedan by just dipping that rear end without changing any graphic features from this point forward. From this point right here, or the only thing I changed was this part right here, and all of a sudden it becomes a traditional sedan. Of course, we can't have a window here, so this obviously needs to be removed. But the point I'm trying to make here is it's not wagony enough. You see that the C-pillar is not even changing, and we can still make this into a sedan. So what I want to do here, if we look at the rear view here, is to stretch out the rear end a bit more, make it into a proper wagon by really bringing this part out to this point and have a clearer angle here and not have it be like 45 degrees sloping here, which of course it looks good having that. It looks a lot sportier. But if we're gonna have a G70 sedan, I think we can have a proper G70 sport shooting brake and still have it be a traditional wagon design. And I also think this part here graphically, this part, as you can see right here, with this cut line here, it clashes with this clean surfacing and graphics here. It just seems like it's a disconnect here. And when I look at this car, I can't help but being reminded of a Subaru Impreza wagon from the mid-2000s. That's the first thing I thought when I saw this car, was that it looks like a Subaru Impreza from the mid-2000s. I'm not sure why, but that's just the thing that popped up in my head. And when I saw these the first times with these angles, so we have a bit of an angle here between these two lights. They're not parallel to each other, which we have on the G80 and the X Coupe concept, which I want to implement here as well. But when I first saw these, it kind of reminded me of bee wings. So the graphics, if you just take the wings of a bee, the graphic outline of the wings looks like this, and these LEDs in the middle is kind of the structures that are inside of the wing. And that was the first thing that popped into my head when I saw this rear end, was Subaru Impreza and bee wings, basically. So what I want to do here is to raise up this part of the car to this point right here, have it go up and make a proper wagon out of this. We can still call it a shooting brake, we can still make it sporty and what have you, and then also implement the graphics of the Concept X. This I think this is a missed opportunity to make the rear end of the Genesis G70 just look like any other wagon with this bumper right here, which is just a straight line, which is not exactly what I thought they were doing in their design when it comes to the rear end graphics, with this ellipse that we've seen since the Genesis concept a couple of years back, the coupe. I can't remember the name of it, and also in the Concept X. So what I want to do is just create that, implement that graphic, and really hammer in the identity of Genesis here, because we have the opportunity to do so based on the previous designs. So make some sort of an ellipse here that goes into both of these design features and encapsulate the rear end in a very Genesis way. So remove this here and have the chamfer go up here instead, and also have some sort of opposite angle up here between the two lights. So we have this ellipse that is typical for Genesis now, and that I don't understand why they went away from when they just created this shooting brake. So with that said, let's continue here in Photoshop and let's have some fun, and let's see if we can maybe hammer in some more Genesis identity in the rear end of this, and also hammer in some more wagonness into this shooting brake design. Alright, so here we go. Let's redesign the rear end of the Genesis G70 shooting brake. Let me know what you think about the overall original design of the Genesis. Just the first impression I had was don't get me wrong, I think it's a good looking wagon. I'm just gonna call it a wagon because that's what it is. And I just think they went a little too soft on the design identity of Genesis, particularly since they've shown us what they're capable of in the concepts and also the production of the G80, for example, with this ellipse in the rear. It just looks really good, and on top of that, it brings a very strong identity, not just to the front part with the this massive grille that we have, that I actually think suits Genesis overall. Even though the grille is massive in the front, it has this Art Deco feel to it. I think Genesis right now is the Art Deco brand when it comes to car design. It used to be maybe BMW with the 7 Series a couple of years back, but now I think it's and also Chrysler used to have some really cool kind of Art Deco style, but now it's definitely Genesis on top of that. So I want to bring what they've shown in the concepts that is shown here in the G70 shooting brake in the front end, with the grille and the dual headlights, the lines of headlights, I want to bring that back to the rear as well and not have it be overstyled. We don't want to make it into just another shooting brake with a simple bumper design, with a simple graphic treatment to the rear end. We want to make something that stands out and that you can that is recognizable immediately as a Genesis. And to me, that was introduced, I think the first concept from Genesis was the Genesis Essentia, if I remember that name correctly, with the incredible proportions of a two-door coupe. Exactly, if I were to sketch a dream two-door coupe, I think the Genesis Essentia is exactly what it would look like. It just looks amazing. The proportions, the stance, everything, and the graphic treatment of the car as well. And that was the first time I saw this ellipse in the rear end, graphically, that was kind of carved in the body of the car. And inside of this ellipse, it's holding all the graphic treatments and elements of the car. And that's what I want to bring in a sort of production style here with the G70 Shooting Brake. Nothing too crazy. I think this is actually something that would be doable and not too complicated to create, because it's essentially you just switch out the bumper part, and the diffuser. That's one piece of molding that you can create, and also the top part with a bit of a chamfer or a bit of a curvature in between the top lights, which kind of creates, I think that makes it look even sportier, because it looks almost like a little spoiler in the deck lid of the car, and it suits the overall Shooting Brake name and design style. And on top of that, as I said, I think this specific Shooting Brake, they went very soft on the wagon side and a lot more towards having it look like almost a sedan. It looks almost, because the angle of the rear end is so steep, and the C-pillar as well. The C-pillar barely changes if we create a sedan out of this. And that's not it's a cool approach when you want a sporty looking shooting brake from a side view, but from a functionality view and from a wagon standpoint, if you want to make something different, if you want to make a sedan and a wagon out of the G70, I think they should be more separated than this. And that's why I want to raise up the rear end a little bit, create more space inside, clean up the rear end, because there are some details in the rear end that just seem a little unnecessary and overstyled, specifically for the Genesis brand. So remove those and implement the beautiful ellipse detail or shape graphic in the rear end. And that's the major changes that I wanted to do to this. Other than that, I'm a real fan of what Genesis is doing right now. As I said, the Concept X, one of the best looking concepts I've ever seen in the past decade or so. Same with the Essentia, which I think came out in, I'm not sure, 2000. I'm not sure, I'm not gonna say a year because I'm not sure, but it wasn't that long ago that it came out. Also one of the better looking concepts I've ever seen the past decade or so. And I think they're heading in the right direction. But with this concept, with this car right here, this production Shooting Brake G70, I think they got a little lost. And they got a little soft on pushing their identity onto this Shooting Brake. And that's kind of what I was hoping to fix with this redesign. That's about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about the Genesis G70 Shooting Brake. Are you a fan of the design or not? As I said, I'm a fan of the original design as well. I just think it can be identified as a Genesis better by implementing these changes. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.